Um, well, I'm Ben. Ben Eaton. I'm 37. I work full time doing IT support here in Houston, and I love playing video games. I love lots of things technology related. Uh, I love listening to music. I love playing music when I have the chance. I love watching television shows and movies with Beth. It's one of our favorite pastimes. Um, and yeah, just going through this journey.
I'm Beth. I'm 53. I am an EA, so I spend most of my time, I guess, being a life manager and air quotes, and spending a lot of time with my cat and Ben. Before we became involved, we were best friends for a really long time. So there's a lot of foundation here. And for anybody joining, if you see our heads move around, I'm also an avid cat mom. And our cat rescue just really takes any opportunity to assume that anything moving is a toy.
Well, if the cat wants to make an appearance, the cat can make an appearance.
She might. And we've, I guess, been together for like 8, 10 years, really a long time.
Found out about all of this. I was actually cat sitting for Beth. She was out of town, and so when that happens, I take the reins here in her apartment. And Kat and I were having our own time together when I started experiencing what I would consider sort of like a normal bout of constipation, which I've actually never experienced up to that point. So I assumed it was just that. However, more than a few days in, after attempting just about any and all remedies for that sort of thing, it wasn't working. I couldn't have like a normal bowel movement, and so it must have been 2 or 3 a.m. when I decided I have to go to an emergency care center because I'm not comfortable standing, I'm not comfortable sitting, I'm not comfortable lying anymore. So yeah, I went to an emergency care center around the corner from here, and after explaining what I was going through, they did some imaging of some sort of my abdomen, and a gentleman came in and told me like, hey, there's a mass in your colon, and you have some lesions in your liver, and not really at the time, I didn't really understand what he was saying to me, right? Like I understood a mass in my colon. Okay, that's not great. He can't say for sure what it is or why it's there, but he says those things, and then he's like, "Well, you got to go to the hospital to get that taken care of." I said, "Cool," and that's really the start of all this. As soon as I got to the hospital and got more testing done, they were able to, say without certainty that I had a colon cancer and that the lesions in my liver were metastatic from that cancer, and so that's really how it all started, right?
And that was in the end of February, beginning of March
Of last year.
of last year. I would say in the span of a week, Ben was probably in 3 hospitals. We were very lucky to be able to get in to see one of the lead oncologists in the country in early onset colorectal cancer. Since Ben is under 50, that's how it's classified, and it is an emerging cancer. And yeah, we got him in there, and they were able to get all the information, gather all the pathology, get all the imaging, and let him know that he had stage 4B advanced colorectal cancer with extensive mets to the liver. And they put in a colonoscopy and a colostomy bag, which he still has. His primary tumor is still there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Given the gravity of the cancer, it was both doctors at Methodist and at MD Anderson were like, we need to start treatment as soon as possible. That's why the primary tumor is still there, just because not being on any sort of treatment could be, fatal.
Right.
It was very important to get started and just continue to treat the disease as much as humanly possible.
So when you got that diagnosis, what did that mean for you in terms of like next steps? What did they do after you got that initial diagnosis? What did that treatment look like?
Definitely, as soon as I found out, just having very little understanding of what that meant, wasn't an initial shock, but it's still concerning. I just in my mind, I'm like, whatever road ahead is there, and we're just gonna get through it. It was everybody's recommendation that we just throw everything we could at it. And at the time, and well, currently the strongest type of chemotherapy to address the FOLFIRINOX, and they introduced
immunotherapy.
So immunotherapy called Avastin.
Yeah, and when they started treatment, one of the things we were lucky enough being at MD Anderson, they do a lot of genetic testing and liquid biopsies, which a lot of hospitals do not do. And will most assuredly not be able to do. And that helped identify that Ben has a very specific mutation called CRAST G12C. So because of that mutation at the time, he could only take certain chemotherapies and certain immunotherapies because although there's a larger arsenal, I had to level up pretty quickly on the medicine front. They're not able to be tolerated by someone with his mutation. So they put him on the FOLFIRINOX, which is oxaliplantin,
Okay.
and then irinotecan, oxaliplantin, and it was, all day therapy, and then go home with the FU5 pump for the rest of the weekend, as well as the Avastin immunotherapy while getting chemotherapy. So you do a day of infusions on Friday, then go home with the pump taken out on Sunday.
And that was roughly 8 to 10 months of that specific treatment, which was frontline or first line treatment. And one of the side effects of oxaliplantin is that it creates or causes neuropathy. And while I was experiencing cold sensitivity and just like overall my body, it felt different. Like I just was twitchy. It's a very interesting, to say the least, experience. I started to actually experience neuropathy, and to my doctor's recommendation, we went to second line therapy, which
they dropped the oxaliplantin.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
but again, still a very similar treatment experience where I go in on Friday for for all day pretty much, and then I go home with a cool pump, which is like a fanny pack.
Okay.
So not bad as far as pumps are concerned.
Yeah.
I slept with it, I continued the next few months on that second line treatment. And I think, Beth had really, gotten full on. I need to know everything that there is to know about treatment options and what other options there are. Is this the best thing to be doing? Should we consider going back, or should we, just trying to understand what else could we be doing?
And one of the things that, was brought to our attention, obviously that's like a life-changing prognosis. The prognosis for someone in Ben's condition with Ben's mutation is usually an average 2-year prognosis with treatment, which is a very sobering prognosis to get, realizing that he's not a number, those numbers are still harsh. So we were already researching because, a lot of the information we'd been hearing was we were very lucky in the sense that not only was he in an emerging cancer where research was happening exponentially, he has a mutation that had been previously considered undruggable and was also experiencing a research exponentially in the sense that in the summer of last year, the FDA approved the very first ever inhibitor for his mutation, which was part of a successful trial called the Crystal trial, where because of that, people who have his mutation, and his mutation is present in other cancers, not just colon, that you could now take this inhibitor, and then the medicine that other patients were taking that they were perhaps seeing better results on, you could now take because the inhibitor was suppressing the mutation.
Yep.
Which was it was considered groundbreaking. It was at Sloan Kettering, it was at MD Anderson. And again, that got approved in July.
Okay.
And started to become the standard of care in the fall. And while all of the frontline, second line treatment that Ben was on was keeping the cancer at bay, so to speak, we weren't actually making any headway with the tumors in his liver or the tumors in his primary tumor in his colon. And they were starting to see some maybe activity in the lungs, maybe not sure activity in the lungs. Again, it's, at this point, the cancer, and our doctors have been very upfront with us. They were, working through that. It's searching through your body, looking for a new place to set up camp.
Yeah.
And, I think, was it maybe in October? His doctors were like, so you can either keep going with this chemotherapy and Avastin, or, and this is where being at a hospital like MD Anderson is so pivotal. They didn't just offer the inhibitor and one of these new medicines, they were like, there's actually a brand new clinical trial that we're running that is the inhibitor and the immunotherapy that he was not previously able to get, and then another immunotherapy. And, if you guys want to try this, you can have a chance to be at the forefront of medicine. And I'll let Ben talk a little bit what it was like to have an opportunity like that barely a year in.
Let's go back a little bit to talk about when I started meeting with my oncologist at MD Anderson. A lot of the talks were about, the longevity of life and the quality of life, right? Improving those two facets. And I got a lot of nurses, a lot of the people that I encountered at MD Anderson, after 6 to 8 months of treatment, they were surprised to see just how well I was doing on this on my initial treatment, right? That first line.
It's a hard chemo.
It is. Everybody's concern is that you lose your appetite, you're nauseous and tired, and I think I was really lucky in that none of those things affected me to incapacitating ways, but again, I endured that very well, and again, really the only reason I stopped is because it was the neuropathy was getting really bad. Anyway, so Friday I go in for treatment, and then all weekend I have a pump attached to me. And while I don't feel bad, I don't feel great either, and I would recover between Monday and Tuesday. Like those were my days where okay, I'm still not 100%, but by Tuesday I was starting to feel better. But obviously, the more that I went through these treatments, it was Tuesday to Wednesday.
The time window of the good days in between the treatment days was just getting shorter and shorter and shorter.
Not my favorite. I mean, I could foresee that I was just going to feel bad
all the time.
Yeah, and going or learning about this trial and
which was a big decision. Again, we got the trial, and we did our research. We got the stats of the previous trial. I would say there was a lot of thought into that decision of being not just to do the trial, but then also we were, I think up until this point, blissfully unaware of just how much work it also takes to get into a trial.
Yeah.
We were presented with the option of the trial right before Thanksgiving. We worked steadily around the clock with the financial clearance team, with his healthcare team at United Healthcare, with the team at MD Anderson. It was a lot of work to get into the trial. Not just to get approved, but also the protocols, the drug clearance. That's you're part of a scientific research development. So you also have to be prepared to pay attention to everything, log everything that we do, pay attention to when we take what medicine. There was a lot more behind the scenes involved because whatever we're doing isn't just so to help his quality of life, it's for everyone else in the study as well.
Yeah, and a big decision for me to consider doing this is hearing or thinking about potentially not being here a year or 2 years or 3 years, whatever it is, knowing that my life has been cut short more than I ever thought. I wanted to be a part of something that could give these sort of chances to have a better quality of life and to prolong someone's life. I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to leave something behind, like a legacy. So to touch more on what the quality of life aspect, right? As I mentioned before, initially on chemotherapy, I'd go on Wednesday and I'd feel like crap all up until at least Tuesday or Wednesday
of the following week.
And so I go into treatment on Wednesdays with this new clinical trial, and I'm back at the office on Thursday.
Wow.
Wednesdays after treatment, I feel a little groggy and a little off put, but I think a lot of it has to do that I'm given Benadryl before the
Uh,
treatment.
Literally the worst thing that makes him feel is the Benadryl. It's just like, again, I can say as someone who sees Ben as much as I do, and I would say I've spent more time at treatment than anybody. We have a great support system and both family and friends, but so it's night and day of how it was for him, even just not just how he feels physically, but even mentally. I just think that there was just this sense of, whatever was being given to you before was just, beating everything out of you.
yeah.
I don't think we even knew how different he could feel till we removed chemotherapy from the equation.
I have one question about the trial. So I know you said the inhibitor has now been FDA approved. So are the other two medications already FDA approved and it's just
They
the
are, they've
combo?
never been used together.
So it's the combo that you guys are in the trial for.
It's the
Yes.
protocol itself.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
And the protocol for his particular cancer. I think cetuximab and adagrasib together became the standard of care once the inhibitor was approved.
That makes sense.
And instead of just putting us right on that, because this trial is run out of MD Anderson, it was also run out of another location, but that location has since been shut down. The trial is using the two immunotherapies with the inhibitor because they've never been used together for colon cancer, and specifically for someone like Ben, where the issue is his liver mets, which are currently unresectable and extensive. The idea is to hopefully, keep them from growing, gaining more ground, and perhaps at some point see some shrinkage. So, yeah.
So when did you officially start the trial, Ben?
Well, that's a good question.
For Thanksgiving?
Either right before or after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Okay. So so sometime like late November.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And what have you guys found in terms of is the trial working? Like, what are the results of it so far for you?
So nothing's worse.
There's
Nothing is bigger.
Yeah.
Some
Progression
takeaway.
free.
Progression free.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one. But stability, right?
Yeah.
Stable is always the word that is used to sort of maybe not indicate progress, but again, it
A lot of people, I think, are not really well versed in that if you've got stage 4B cancer, you're really not necessarily looking for remission or, you're looking for stability and life prolongation and quality of life.
Yes.
And, typically the hope is, at least that's how we view it, as, the clinical trials offer you an opportunity to have a higher quality of life, longer quality of life, so that the science can catch up to what you need.
Right.
but other things to consider are that my cancer marker continues to go down.
Yeah.
While
Wonderful.
not
Yeah, I think when he started, his CEA was over 1,400, and it's like, what?
10 point
Yeah,
something.
it's,
Wow.
he's in low double digits, yeah.
And again, my blood work isn't fluctuating as much as it was when I was on chemotherapy, right? So it's just a lot more stable, right? So.
Yeah. So I mean, so that's good news, right? I think that is good for reinforcing to people that, like you said, sometimes with cancer, it's not growing is the progress you want, right? Because it can grow so fast without these types of treatments.
Since there so much was happening in his area of cancer, and with his mutation, our hope has always been to stay on the front of research, in the hopes that if we stay progression free long enough, someone will develop a medicine that has a chance at beating some of these tumors in his liver, in the sense that for someone like Ben, most people who have stage 4B colon cancer, they don't die from the tumors in their colon, they die because of the mets in their liver.
Right.
And his liver is currently unresectable. But, as medicine was growing exponentially, the thinking was that since if you met him, most people don't even think he has cancer. much less the type
And
of cancer that he
it's
has.
funny, we're sitting here and I noticed like, oh, what is this on my shirt? And this is actually where my port is. This is where I receive my infusions. And I was like, why is that? Oh, yeah. Sorry, just a note there.
Yeah, I think that's a good, you not only are helping progress science yourself, but you're benefiting from that at the same time. And also hopefully buying yourself the time so that you can get new options. Yeah. So obviously the big thing happening right now is we hear a lot of things going on in the federal government about cutting the NIH budget by 40%, cutting the NSF budget, cutting all the staff, not all the staff, but cutting a significant number of staff at Human Health and Services.
And the National Cancer Institute.
Which is, yeah, they're within the NIH. So there's a lot happening, right, in terms of the ability to do science in the US. So I have the first question, I guess, is as a patient and as a caregiver for a patient, how are you guys feeling as you hear all of this stuff happening in the news?
I mean, it's a lot of concern, you know, I try not to think about it so actively, just because like I already have my worries and I already have my concerns. But it definitely doesn't leave a good taste in my mouth, you know. And again, I because I deal with people directly, you know, I spend a lot of time with other people, you know, with their issues or you know just in general. I try not to wear it so often. But again, it's a lot of concern and uneasiness that you know sits with me. But I know for my partner Beth, it impacts her a lot more, and that also doesn't make me feel great either.
Well, I mean, I feel like my role is pretty much anybody with a loved one with cancer right now. They're trying to stay alive. And I think that while we knew it would be a challenge, we did not have this level of devastation on our bingo card. I did not realize they were going to come for cancer so hard and so fast. I view cancer as a bipartisan issue. I do not know anyone on either side of the political arena that is not affected by this. And I am quite shocked that it's now become like all about politics. And like I said, for us, you know, I think people look at a lot of this medical research and cancer research and they think of everything in such an abstract way that decades are happening and nothing's happening. And I'm like, in his area of cancer alone, there's been not one, not two, but 3 breakthroughs in the past 12 months. One of them he's on now. 2 of them appear to be dead in the water because nobody really knows what's going on at the FDA. Nobody really knows what's going on to get things newly minted for funding. You know, I think one of your questions touched on what our doctors are saying. You know, most of our doctors don't want to go on record. They are nervous. They are afraid.
Equally uncertain, yeah.
They use words like devastating. One of our doctors said that he doesn't know what to tell his patients who are waiting 8 months to see him because there won't be anything in 8 months. But you know, and they don't want to say anything. You know, when we ask them what we can do, they're like, get out there, tell your story. That they need to understand that like they're coming for this infrastructure hard. And what will happen is Ben's current trial will run out of money and there will be nothing new. Even though it's already here, even though the science is here and the research is here, things are approved, there'll be nothing new for him to move to. There will be only the opportunity to go backwards, if that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think people realize how much, right? Like there's also like how many years of research went into making this all of these drugs that you are now on, right? So there are also all of those drugs that are in those early stages right now that without funding won't be able to get to the point where you are now with your medications.
And there's two new inhibitors that were approved, I think in January.
Okay.
In the sense that if you think of adagrasib as like your first gen inhibitor, like they're already trying to work on the next ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think there's another study that's, I think it's also grounded about using targeted therapy from tumors that have been resistant to shrinkage to like turn them against themselves in GI tumors to reshrink. It's been on the news quite a bit. Again, we both follow, me probably more avidly, just because that's where the research is. You know, clinical trials aren't a last ditch effort. You're on the front lines getting tomorrow's medicine today.
Mhm. Yep.
And, you know, I personally would like to see my partner turn 38. And I did not have this administration leveling his pipeline. You know, we were prepared to lose him to cancer. We were not prepared to lose him to politics. These are cuts that are going to devastate life for people like Ben.
Yeah.
Not just this year, but like where's his opportunity to leave his legacy, because his partake in this trial will be nowhere to give to anyone 2 years from now or 3 years from now or four again.
Too much into just anything political, but again, I understand and support the idea of making any organization that receives any sort of federal funding to be accountable. Like, I'm not opposed to these sort of efforts, but this is not the way to do it.
I think that's universal too. Like all institutions and organizations can improve, right?
Yeah.
No matter what. But you don't take a hammer and destroy it when you're trying to
No,
improve
and you
it.
also don't destroy research that's already been made and advancements that are already made and advancements that, again, his research pipeline, it's, you know, that's been a source of great hope for both of us, because we were just like, hey, you know, everything we were reading was like, if you're going to get cancer, at least get one that the research is moving fast in.
Right. Right.
And, you know, he doesn't have 2, 3, 4, 5 years to wait for them to undo the damage. You know, I've had, you know, to touch on your question of it, you know, how do we respond when people are political? I get very frustrated because this isn't a political issue. I'll say it even if he won't. These cuts are going to kill him this year. And they don't have to happen. You know, like I said, we were prepared to lose him to cancer, not to something that's avoidable. These cuts are avoidable. They don't have to happen. There is still time to autocorrect, to reverse course, and to protect the research. And I don't know who needs to hear that message or who needs to stand on the steps of the White House or Congress or on the floor. But, you know, there are many of us, because he's just, I mean, a lot of people have stage 4 cancer.
Right. Right.
And I've heard terms like there's not a good return on investment. That's absolute crap. There's a great return on investment. You know, Ben is a year and a half into a 2-year prognosis. I am unwilling to accept letting this administration kill him.
Yeah. Yeah.
To save $1 that they won't save.
It's unfathomable, to be totally honest. Every day I'm like, I don't understand how this is the reality of what's
And
happening.
I feel like the only thing that can stop it is for people to speak up and say, hey, you know what? Here's my person.
I pay taxes.
Yeah.
You do.
Do so, just, you know, please don't take away my research funding.
Yeah. And so I wonder, when you guys are talking to people, maybe it's different for the people you're talking to because they know you've been, but are they surprised do they know that these cuts are happening? Are they surprised that they might impact people like you? Like, do they know? I'm wondering.
Because of the world we live in and because of how information is, you know, travels to all different persons, right? Like, there are just different levels of understanding and of just simply acknowledging what is happening. I'd say that some of the people that I talk to more frequently are in the know and are aware and relatively understanding and equally concerned.
Like our friend Dee, who made the GoFundMe, she was aware. Again, GoFundMe that we made not for money. We just were trying to find a platform to put all the information. You know, we are active in the protest community. We're active online, active on social media, but it can be overwhelming for people of where to go, what to do, what to say. And, you know, some people get it. Some people, I think there's a lot of denial happening that until the faucet gets turned off for their loved one, they seem to not realize that the dam is coming.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not huge on social media, like as far as like trying to, not until recently, spread this type of awareness.
Yeah.
These are platforms that I would use just to keep in touch with certain individuals and keep them family, etc.
Yeah.
And so again, I felt like, okay, well, we can share this information, but I just don't think that when people are going, scrolling through mass amounts of information and especially with everything that's happening in the government today, everybody's seeing a post about this and about that, and they're just like, oh, I don't have time for this right now. When Dee, proposed this idea, I was like, you know what, I support it 100%, whatever you guys want to do to help really paint a picture as to the type of impact that would happen if these cuts and defunding efforts
Are successful.
are successful, what kind of impact that on me alone, right? Not to
Yeah.
mention.
Right.
Well, and that was,
Yeah.
I think, tough getting people to understand too, that like, we had someone saying, well, you'll just raise the money. I was like, I don't really think that anybody's getting it. It's not about the money, because without the research and the funding and the backing of these trials, all the money in the world isn't going to mean anything.
Right. Right. You need the infrastructure to
Uh-huh.
make that possible. Yeah. And it's hard because the infrastructure is usually invisible.
It's not tangible, which is why I think people have difficulty grasping what's happening.
Yeah.
That they are literally chopping off cancer research at the knees and then expecting it to walk. And, I have friends who work at the National Cancer Institute and who work at the NIH who also will want to remain anonymous, who are like, hey, it's bad, like it's dire, who have told me like they are coming and there won't be anything left.
Yeah, I've heard similar from that sources too.
I don't think people really believe it, and I'm not sure they'll believe it until it's too late. And that's why we're doing things like this, because we want people to know about it while there's still a chance to save it.
Right. Right. So what have you been telling people in your life to do to help?
Again, it's just simply just trying to spread the awareness of what these cuts will do, what sort of impact they'll have on people like me, and not just me, but people like me. And so primarily that, but again, just if people have the time and the desire to help, really, it would be to contact their elected officials and let them know that what they're proposing to do is just not right.
Obviously, things are rough right now. So where are you guys finding hope right now?
This,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's huge that you reached out. We've had a couple people reached out and nothing really came to fruition because people are scared.
Yeah.
People are scared to talk. People are scared to make their accounts public, scared to be out there.
And just like anything, it requires funding, right? So even if somebody does have like good intentions to start a movement, to march on Washington, etc., all of this requires funding, which is sometimes hard to come by, and sometimes it might be, you might have a contract that says, oh, you will receive this funding, and then suddenly it gets cut from you, and now you no longer have that sort of infrastructure available.
Yeah.
I find hope in the fact that people are listening to the story and spreading the story, and if we can have any impact there, that's the same level of impact as his trial, because we're leaving. I mean, what kind of mark are we going to leave here? Because this isn't just, for us, it's about us, but it's not just about us. And that's what we hope everybody can understand, whether they watch this video or an excerpt or share your story or my story or hit a like or a heart or a comment, that every interaction propels this information to maybe somebody who hasn't seen it yet and needs to know.
Yeah. And I think one thing I like to remind people of is, particularly if I'm talking to other scientists, is that we think in data and numbers, but it's actually not data and numbers that change minds. It's stories. It's stories and people. And hearing like what is the actual real life consequences or the benefits, like whatever we're talking about, like why does this matter in the first place? That's what like will compel people to care.
And I mean, and the research, I remember when Ben was talking about this trial, he was like, you know, being told under the age of 40 that, you know, you might not see 40. What do you have to, like, but where's your impact? You know, most people have 10, 20, 30 years to try to make an impact on things. There was a large part of him, and I apologize for speaking for him, but you know, it can be emotional.
Yeah.
That, you know, this trial gave him the opportunity to leave people with stage 4B crass colorectal cancer after him in a better place than him. And you know, they don't get to take that from him too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful thing to think about, right? Is like, and I don't think necessarily people think of that, right? Is everyone, I didn't think about it until you guys shared that, is like every person who's in a clinical trial, no matter what happens with their outcome, is leaving a legacy to help the people who come behind.
And most of the support groups for clinical trials, they are all talking about that and have their legacy stolen from them.
Yeah, that's a very powerful way of thinking about it and talking about it.
Well, and I'm not sure if people see that you aren't just taking, these are people who've already been given a crap prognosis, and you are now not only taking their opportunity to live away, you're taking their opportunity to leave patients in the future better away from them as well. So you're taking their current life and their legacy for absolutely no reason, then you just want to throw a hammer at everything. And you know this from your infrastructure. This isn't, if these cuts go through, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There's no coming back from them.
Yeah. We've touched on pretty much everything, but is there anything else you want people to know?
Get involved. You have a voice, use it.
I mean, from my perspective, I can only really touch on just what a difference it's been to be on this trial versus just your standard types of care, chemotherapy, which again, I'm new. If all else, at least I hope that that's still there, right, afterwards. It's been night and day, and I prefer not to have to go back to chemotherapy, right? I foresee that being a reality no matter what, but if I can continue to push that back as much as possible, that'd be great.
Yeah, because the medication you're on now is keeping your progression at bay, and
Absolutely.
you feel pretty good while being on it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you sleeping on Wednesday.
Yeah, I went to work the next day.
Yeah.
I have to, you know, I don't have to, but I do a lot of moving around. I walk around a lot. I check in on folks, and yeah, just while having, you know, stage 4 cancer and living with a colostomy bag and all of that, if I have to continue doing that, I prefer being on something that isn't as detrimental as chemotherapy.
Yeah.
Again, I don't really think he realized how bad he felt on it till he was offered an alternative.
Yeah.
Never in a million years did I think we'd be sitting in my apartment on Monday night having a conversation going along the lines of, which one do you think will kill me faster, cancer or these cuts? Like, I never thought that this is where we would be, but it's where we are. And, you know, I'm not willing to sit on the sidelines while they kill my partner.
Something that I got here earlier and I was like, I don't know how I would answer this question. You know, what would I say directly to a lawmaker if I had them sitting in front of me? Again, I still don't, right? But what I would, thinking about it now, I would ask them to spend a day with anybody who's in my situation or in my position, and just sort of see what I had to live through now, right? To see that I'm just what I would consider an average American citizen, right? Like I asked me 10 years ago, I love, the United States is the best country in the world to me, right? I love living in Texas. All these things. I'd like to fight for my country in any way that I can, but for this to be happening right now, it's not the type of world I want to be living in. It's saddening to see, and not just because of what they're doing, to cancer research or just funding overall, any research, right, scientific and otherwise, but just the types of actions that are being taken by this administration. I'm not great, and so what I would say to them is just to spend a day with somebody like me to see how these types of cuts are impacting them. So,
I think
that's
they
all.
all should be required to do that.
Yeah,
I think they would all be kinder humans if they did.
I spent a lot of time engaging online with people, and I challenge them frequently to go spend the day on either the pediatric chemo floor, which we are frequently on, which has already been hard hit, or the regular ATC floor, and go spend the day there. And before you make these sweeping decisions, there's nobody stealing from them at these institutions. These institutions are doing everything they can to save people's lives.
Yeah. And from what I'm hearing, a lot of people don't know this is happening.
No, they don't.
So this is why sharing stories is so important. Because a lot of there's so much news that it's hard to keep
They
track
think
of.
it's regular waste and regular fraud and that nothing's actually happening. They don't know. They think it's all abstract and I specifically, Ben wants to point here in Texas, it's the medical center is the lifeblood of a lot of Houston's economy. So from what we understand, these cuts aren't going to just decimate cancer research. They will also decimate the institutions that Ben needs, even on traditional medicine. And, that is going to be a giant problem for anybody with cancer. The medical center, if you've ever been there, it's immense, it's enormous, its entire lifeblood is being threatened. And it's an ecosystem, and you can't just kill 3 things in it and expect it to work.
Yeah. It looks like MD Anderson receives more than $172 million from NIH to do that work.
and again, I beyond words thankful for every single staff member at MD Anderson.
And Baylor
Sure.
and NIH.
They do everything they can to make my experience in all of this as best as good as possible.
So that's it.
Yeah.
Also,
No,
thank you, Liz.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. Well, thank you both for your time, and thank you for being willing to share. I know it's not easy to talk about these things, and I'm sorry that you're going through this in the first place, and I'm sorry that it's happening to you right now in this moment in history when all the things.
Yeah. But again, this is important to
yeah.
us too. We're leaving our mark here. Hopefully if this doesn't make a difference for Ben, hopefully it makes a difference for someone else.
Yeah.